Welcome to the Middle AGEish podcast, authentically and unapologetically keeping it real, discussing all things middle-age-ish, a time when metabolism slows and confidence grows. Join fashion and fitness entrepreneur Ashley Badowski, former Celtic woman and founder of the Lisa Kelly Voice Academy, Lisa Kelly, licensed psychologist and mental health expert, Dr. Pam Wright, and highly sought-after cosmetic injector and board-certified nurse practitioner, Trisha Kennedy Roman. Join your hosts on the journey of Middle AGEish.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Middle AGEish Podcast. My name is Trisha Kennedy Roman, and I'm joined here today with my co-host, Ashley Badowski, Lisa Kelly, and Dr. Pam Wright. And today we are joined with Christine Handy. She is an international model, a cancer survivor, a motivational speaker, and just an inspiration to all. So welcome to Middle AGEish Podcast.
Yes, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
We're super excited to have you, and you've got such a great story. And we were listening to your podcast and looking at your website and going through cancer. I mean, what a shift in your focus, obviously, of going from external beauty to, worrying about your health. And obviously with that came physical changes. And so I think that that's amazing. So we'd love to hear a little bit about your story.
Thank you. Well, I started modeling at the age of 11 and did it for 20 years because I wanted to be a model and I wanted to be in front of the camera and all those wonderful things. And I was just going along with what I thought I wanted. And then I had 3 major illnesses, and all 3 of them involved the possibility of death. And I shortly realized after the third one, I was getting knocked in the head going, okay, wake up. That's not what this is about. It's not about your external beauty. It's not about materialism. It's not about accumulating things. It's about people. It's about serving. It's about giving back. And it took me a longer time to realize that than most. And so after my breast cancer journey, and because of my breast cancer journey, and because I had a mountain of women that stood by me, and although this was the third illness, and they were standing by me for the other 2 as well, and I would just look at them when I was diagnosed with cancer, and I just would say, I'm not worth this. You guys have gone on this long journey of me, and it's all been trauma and difficult. When's the good time? And they would say, it doesn't matter. We're here for the fruit and we're also here for the labor. So we're good. And I didn't understand that because I thought the world was very transactional, because in the modeling world, the world that I lived in, the modeling world for those many years, it was very transactional. And so after I got through my breast cancer journey, my friends basically said, here, now you have the baton. You're strong enough. We've taught you what is important. You stand by people. You stick around in the good times and the bad, and seasons come and go. And your job is to show up. And so I did. I wrote a book about my journey, which became a bestseller. And then I started to become a public speaker. And then I started to be on social media and became a social media influencer. And then I said to myself, I have to use my pain. That has to fuel what I do. And then in 2020, when the whole world was locked down for COVID, I was in the hospital in and out for 3 months. Ultimately, what happened was I had breast implant illness. And because I had breast implants after my mastectomies, they were infected in 2020, and they ultimately were excavated in 2020. And after the physical pain of that and the emotional pain of waking up with a concave chest in a hospital without visitors, could not have anybody there because it was COVID. After going through another, season of trauma, I just said, okay, forget it. I'm going to call my modeling agency, and because this feels really bad. And I started to see people online who said to me, you're really brave for not putting a prosthetic on. You're really brave for wearing a tight fitted sweater without a chest. And so I called my modeling agency and I said, I have to come back to work. And they weren't really psyched about it. They didn't think it was such a great idea. And so I said to my manager, I said, okay, we got to get to big brands like Victoria's Secret. My modeling agency isn't on board. I'm going to start walking New York Fashion Week. Long story short, I ended up partnering with Victoria's Secret as a breastless model for them at the age of 52.
That's amazing.
And so I finally just said to myself, through all of these, major traumatic seasons of my life, I can use this pain. And if I show that I can use this pain, maybe somebody else will be able to use their pain. And if I share my story, maybe somebody else will share theirs, and that will save somebody else's life. And so I felt like it was my responsibility because that's what my friends had done for me.
That's awesome.
I mean, I can keep going. The story is so crazy and so long, but I can get lost.
So no, but I think that's what's so amazing is that And I love your saying purpose in pain. Like that's when you find your purpose. I think that that's so valid because at this stage in our life, our pain and the journeys that we go through vary. Obviously some might not be as intense as others, but everyone's journey does have moments of pain. And I think that what's so inspiring is that finding that purpose through whatever that trauma, that tragedy, that pain is. I think that that's what's so inspirational. And I think that that's what more women, throughout life. I know that pain doesn't have an age requirement. But with us just talking about things that we've gone through in our lives and being in our middle age, I do think that just hearing that story, that don't get stuck in the pain, like find that purpose, that why did you have to go through it? Like how do you come out on the other side? I think that that's super important.
It's been an interesting journey to say the least, but I think from watching obviously my friends, but also from watching other cancer patients, because I mentor a lot of cancer patients now. And in fact, I mentor a lot of people in general. And what I say to them is I have this post-traumatic wisdom, right? It can look like it can be post-traumatic wisdom or it can be PTSD and you can drown it and you can, suffocate it and not talk about it. But that doesn't help anybody, including yourself. And to serve, it ultimately helps yourself because you're helping other people. It makes you feel good about yourself, but serving also helps other people. And so I try to mentor other breast cancer patients and just say, one, your voice matters, which so often in society, I feel like society's like, oh no, you don't matter, you don't count. And I try to speak against that. And then I also talk to them about, being able to be vulnerable is very, it's difficult and it takes a lot of courage. And so often I think in my journey, I would have a lot of courage at one moment in my life and say to my manager, like, let's get in touch with Victoria's Secret. It took us months to get in touch with them. It took us months to get a contract with them. But then after it happened and it came out, I felt I had less courage. So, and it had nothing to do with Victoria's Secret. It's just that we go through these waves and these seasons of courage and then then no courage. And I think so often people look at strong women and say, oh, that person has a lot of courage. Well, tomorrow I might wake up with a lot of courage, but then maybe I won't. And so I think what my friends did for me, they showed me courage and I borrowed that courage. And then in moments of my life, like, collaborating with brands to model, I showed great courage and people can borrow that courage. People without a chest can look at that and go, you know what? If she can walk in New York Fashion Week without a chest or model for Victoria's Secret without a chest, maybe I can go to work without a prosthetic today. Because I get messages from people who say that. And so we can borrow each other's courage by being vulnerable and by storytelling. It doesn't mean we always have courage. And so I try to talk about courage a lot because I don't always wake up with a lot of courage, but some days I need to borrow it. And some days I have too much and I can lend it out. So it's always a good topic to talk about courage in that way, because people just think, oh, that person has courage or that person doesn't. It's not true.
God, I love that borrowing of courage because it's so true. Like sometimes you only see one facet of someone and you're like you said, like, oh my God, they're so strong. They're like this girl boss and it's just amazing. But that's like, we all have our peaks and valleys. And so I love the thought of you borrow courage when you need it. And then you give it when you have a lot of it to the next person. So I think that's fantastic. And I think that can actually go across the board for lots of things. Yeah, for sure.
And that's what you guys are doing with this podcast. You're showing courage. You're showing up for people. You're sharing stories.
But I think just being like with you, you're honest. You're honest about, hey, this is how it is. And I think that sometimes it's really hard to do because you want to look like you have it all together. You want to look like, there's nothing wrong. But I think that's when people can really relate to you. That's when you're getting those messages of people who are experiencing the same things as you. And you were brave enough to come out and, say, hey, this is how it is. This is what I look like with a, tight fitted sweater on. And I think that that's really awesome because, there are people sitting at home that think that they're the only one or, that no one else is experiencing that. So I think I think our most moving guests have been those people who share their pain and make it relatable and how they've been able to overcome those things.
Well, you're right. And it is hard. It's not always easy, which is why I talk about courage, but it's so important, especially in the world we live in, especially with social media.
Yes.
Right. We're all putting on this fake facade. I'm not talking specifically about myself or you guys, But so often people are putting on this fake facade and putting on these filters and they're saying, this is my life. And that's not true. And we really need to negate that. We really need to have these honest tales of truth, because if we don't, then it's really the young people. Because, when you're middle-aged, hopefully you've learned enough to know that a lot of this is transparent. But when you're young, if you have daughters, I have sons, but if you have daughters and they're watching and they're going, I feel less than. Because their self-esteem is being decimated by social media right now.
Which is fake. Like, that's the crazy thing. It's like that they are feeling like not worthy to something that's fake.
Yeah.
Like, it's not real.
Yeah.
But it takes people like us who are saying, like, this is not real. Nobody's perfect. The reality isn't authentic. And so I get on my social media all the time and I'm like, listen, guys, I have like literally zero courage today. This is what's going on in my life. And they're like, oh my gosh, like, you're so honest. And I think to myself, if we could all be just honest, then the world would look different. One of the reasons why I wrote my book was because I wanted to show women uniting like you guys do. You guys are a group, you're collaborating, you're not judging each other. You're not in competition. And I think social media, I think the world that we live in, we're trying to compete with each other. I'm not, but we're trying to compete with each other. And I think that's so toxic. But if nobody's showing that, and people aren't showing that on social media, they're like, look at my picture. My picture is prettier. Look at my vacation. My vacation is better. That's not helping anybody. And so if we have these conversations that are honest, maybe that will help somebody, not feel so alone in their
And it's such a vicious circle, though, because it's like, it's the most insecure people that are putting those photos and videos and life stories up because they don't feel good enough. And then, people are telling them they're great and then they can't live up to it's so difficult. It's just, it really is. It's so hard. But I always feel that I'm like, oh God,
you're just like
stop.
on this constant gerbil wheel.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Which is sad.
Yeah. Well, we can participate, right? Like, I participated in that gerbil wheel for too many years. And then when I lost my hair to chemo and I lost my chest as to mastectomies, then I lost my chest again to breast implant illness, I was like, oh my gosh, like, my root was like completely unwound. And so if I went back to that same measure of society, of living for society and all the things that comes with it, then I would go back to that roller coaster. And I just was like, I'm done. I'm done with caring about what people think of me. I'm done with my measure being society. Society is not going to stand by me when I'm losing my hair and pulling out my hair for chemotherapy. They're not going to. And so what is my measure? My measure is faith. And that can't be uprooted. Nobody's going to take that from me. And so we have to figure out what our measure is. And if it really is like what you look like, remember, you're going to age. And remember that looks can be taken away. If it is money, money can be lost, right? And so you have to figure out, like, what can I stand on that is not going to be a roller coaster? And for me, it's my faith. And that's how I'm grounded. And that's how I stay, like, not psychotic in this crazy world we live in.
Well, with faith, it comes to, at least in my opinion, when you have that type of faith, like, then you have that moment, like, even in the bad times, like, it still hurts. You still have to go through that dark chapter, but the faith is that one glimmer of light that can help you, like, that kind of actually guides you out of it, no matter what it is. So I totally agree. I do feel like that, whatever your faith is, but it takes faith in something to get through that dark stage, because the darkness, like, you can't get through it. There's no light unless you have faith.
I think being vulnerable to and reaching out to people, I think that that's really important. That I remember one of our guests previously, how he talked about you've got to ask for help, not act like everything's okay if things aren't okay, and really lean into your support system, because you can't do things alone.
We've said this so many times before, but life, I don't think, was ever meant to be solitary. It wasn't supposed to be a one-woman show.
No.
Well, a lot of it goes back to self-esteem. And I can talk very freely about this because I had zero self-esteem for a lot of my life. When I was the guest model, I had zero self-esteem. I thought, well, this isn't a big enough job, which is a joke, right? Looking back, it was such a joke.
Yeah.
Right?
Guest back in the day was amazing.
I know.
I was like the guest girl. Hello.
But I felt terrible about myself.
Right.
What was I doing? I was trying to get more. I was trying to get bigger jobs. I was trying to have more, accolades or whatever. because it wasn't filling me up. But that was a self-esteem issue. And going back to what you guys said earlier about asking for help. When you go through chemotherapy, you need lots of help. Everybody needs lots of help. Whether you have children or no children, you still need lots of help. And if our self-esteem isn't strong enough to ask for help, that's pride. We're going to be like, oh no, I'm good. Well, nobody's good.
Right.
It doesn't exist. And so when I like shred my pride, when I was first diagnosed with cancer, I was like, okay, you know what? I actually do need help. And I can't be this tough like chick that can get everything done because I can't get everything done right now. And it sucks. And I need everybody to help me right now. That's like my ego was gone. And then I could rebuild my self-esteem, because once you lose your ego, then you can rebuild it on whatever you want.
Yes. Amen to that.
When did you start writing your book? Did you write it during your breast cancer journey? Was it after your journey? What made you start writing the book, and when did you start it?
I kind of knew that I was going to write the book shortly after I started chemotherapy. And then, I went through so much chemo. I was so violently ill. I ended up obviously losing my hair. I was like 90 pounds wet. I needed full-time care. It was my third illness. I was already depleted. So I was not doing anything but trying to survive during that time. But I was keeping all the emails and the texts from my friends because I knew that I was going to use that material at some point to write a book. So I wrote the book in 2015. So 2 years after my treatment was over. And, it's a novel. It's a fictional depiction of my life, which is actually being made into a film right now. The film is called Hello, Beautiful. And it's a great description, novel about cancer, about breast cancer. It's very honest. It's very vulnerable. It's not very flattering. There's a lot of things in there that aren't very flattering about me, but I think it's important to share that stuff. If I had just written a book about my friends all showed up and I had these really pretty wigs and they braided them and they washed them for me. And, I survived. Then I think that would have been, kind of not true.
Yeah. It would have been just fluff. You got to get down to like the like when I say ugly, I don't mean that, but like just get down to the pain and the suffering, whatever stages it goes through. So
there was a lot of stuff about family and the dynamics there. And so it was an interesting rendition of what happened in my life, but it was well received. So I'm very grateful for that. I'm glad I wrote it.
So when you talk about spirituality, was that something a part of your life before, or did that kind of transition as you were going through all the different physical ailments and issues?
Well, it's a great question, because it's funny, when I was prior to my cancer diagnosis, my friends would say to me, come to this Bible study, you might learn a few things. And I was like, nope, I got to work out. I got my trainer. I got to stay in shape. I got a modeling job. I got, not interested. And it was like, right when I was diagnosed with cancer, I was like, darn it, I should have been going to this Bible study instead of like getting in shape. I picked the wrong path. And so I had a spiritual life, but it was when it was convenient. And I quickly changed it to be more of a focus for me. And that really helped save my life. Very grateful for it.
I think that sometimes when you're, I'm a psychologist, so I'm big into like loss of control. And so when you lose control and you can't take over everything and you can't say what's going to happen and you don't know everything, I think that's when you get to that kind of like what you talked about, the bottom where you're just like, okay, what's my purpose and meaning? Like, why am I here?
At some point,
what am I here to
you
do?
do have to give it over to a faith. Like you just have to trust that there's a process and that there's a meaning behind it. And when you get to that place and you realize that there is faith, and, sometimes you do have to struggle and you have to hurt and you have to get to the bottom of the barrel where you don't know if you're going to wake up the next day, or you don't know if this is going to be it. But if you have the option and you are given the grace to get to the other side, I know, speaking personally, that peace is amazing. Like the peace that you find on the other side of that, I think is something that I wish more people knew. And you hate to say that because it comes with such a price. But if you are given the option and you're giving the grace to get to that other side, the peace that you find and the appreciation that you find is something that is really hard to even articulate. Yeah. It's just like you just hope that it pours from you, whether it's just your eyes sparkle a little bit more and your words are used for grace, instead of insult or, whatever. So
you described it perfectly. I totally get it, but you described it perfectly.
Again, I say this all the time. You know, when you find your purpose, you find your peace. But I found my purpose, like probably where you found yours. Not with cancer, but I have been there. And it was in the dead of night by yourself in a hospital bed.
Yeah.
You know, and that's when, you know, wherever that peace comes from, it comes, you know, but when you find it, it is something to be very grateful for.
Absolutely. You don't want to give that up.
No. And you want to pay it forward. Like that's one of the things like with you. I mean, granted, mine is on a much lesser scale, but you get up every morning with such a grateful heart and that you realize that your purpose here, there is a purpose. And so you just have to you have to go and do the very best that you can and make the difference that you can and impactful and just hope that, you know, you bring a little bit of joy.
Yes. You know, I think one thing, like we don't realize what you've got until it's gone. And I know you do a lot with the charitable wig and the wig exchange. And that's something, you know, you don't think about, you know, I have my hair. I don't think about like what it would be to actually have my hair falling out. But, you know, I watched it just the other day on, you know, we were talking about watching reels. I was watching a mom shave her head because her little girl was going to go through, you guys know I'm going to cry. But the little girl was, you know, going to lose her hair. And so can you tell us a little bit about that foundation? Because that's something that, you know, again, you don't realize what that would feel like until it's actually happening to you. We kind of take that, you know.
And I would love to hear about this because we all know that I wear wigs from my illness in 2020 as well. So I would love to hear about this story and tell us a little bit more about it.
Well, I mean, especially my modeling career, from a very young age, my hair was kind of my signature. I had really long, beautiful, very thick blonde hair. And so the thought of losing my hair was very traumatic. And when it started to come out, I didn't shave my head. I clung onto every single last piece of hair. And my friends were like, you look ridiculous. You need to just shave it. I was like, I'm not. If I have 2 hairs on my head, I'm keeping it. So I was just, it was horrible. And my friends, like we bought these wigs and I was able to afford them. And they literally, one of my friends would pick them up. She'd say, I can't remember what exactly her phrase was, but she'd say like, put the puppies on the front and he'd pick them up and she'd pick up these wigs. And then another friend, she'd wash them. And then another friend would pick them up from her and they would braid them. And so I'd get this box of wigs back every Sunday with 7 or 8 wigs that were all different lengths, blonde.
Yeah.
They were braided in these elegant ways. And I felt excited about that. Like if you have people that, you know, can do that for you and make you feel excited. And I wasn't excited because they were bringing me a gift. I wasn't excited because they bought me anything. They were making my life easier. And they're trying to help me in ways that I couldn't really help myself at the time. But I could afford wigs. And so many people can't. So when I completed my chemotherapy and my hair grew back, there is an organization called eBeauty. It's a wig exchange program where people donate wigs. And we have partnered with L'Oreal, who gives us grant money, and Paul Mitchell Salons, who washes and styles our wigs. And then we send them out to people who want a wig. So all you have to do is go to ebeauty.com and you pick out the color, the style, and the cut, and we'll send you a free wig.
Wow.
And that's amazing.
We have like 10,000 wigs in our warehouse in Washington, D.C. We have so many wigs to give away. And the only real reason why we haven't given them all away is just because word of mouth.
Right.
You know, we need to talk about it more because wigs, you know, real wigs, real hair is very expensive.
Very.
And so it's an important nonprofit that I work with, but it all stems from, again, I mean, if I had never had breast cancer, I would never even thought about losing, you know, somebody losing their hair or needing a wig or not being able to. And so they're like these little nuggets about what you go through. You can pass on, you know, that kind of charity that you learn about or you understand, and it can help people in so many different ways. So it's such a privilege to be able to talk about this stuff.
I think that's amazing because we all know that even though like my hair has grown back, when I lost it in 2020, when I found the world of wigs, you'd never have a bad hair day. But I think that it's what you talked about is so true because I know when I was in the hospital and my hair was falling out and, you know, you think of wigs and you think of like the bowl cuts and they look weird. Yeah. And so like the journey of that, I think you're so right. There needs to be more education. It needs to be not so taboo. Yes. wigs are expensive, but there are different programs like you just talked about that can help women, because even with a lot of confidence, when you lose your hair, for a woman, at least for me, I'm just speaking for myself, that does impact you. You can be a strong woman and you can be grateful and you can have all of those qualities, but there's something for me when my hair thinned out so drastically, there's just something to that is just an emotional, it's just an emotional journey. And, it's women need to talk about it more because it is legit. It's true. But there's so many amazing options, and women, I know, Lisa, you didn't know forever.
I didn't know at all. I kept going, oh my gosh, she must spend a fortune at the hairdresser. She's always, because I wanted her hairdresser's number because I'm like, oh my God, her hair's always amazing.
But that's the thing is just being able to talk about it, because as women, that is something that we take pride in. And I understand that pride is not a good thing, but there are little nuggets that we do. So I love that you talk about it, because it's something that's important.
There's a lot of shame involved with
there
loss
is.
of hair.
Yes.
I mean, we just have to say it. It's the truth. And other than the shame, which is a totally different subject, my kids wanted me to look like their mom. Even though I was bald, even though I was, lost 30 pounds, they wanted to come home from school and see somebody that looked like their mother.
Right.
And so when they came home from school and I had a cap on my head and no hair, they were visibly different. And one time my mom came over one day and she bought this brunette wig, and it was like a really cute short bob. And she's like, oh my gosh, look how cute you are in this wig. And I was like, oh, it's fine, whatever. And one of my sons came home from school, and he was 11 at the time. And he came, I'll never forget, I saw him walk in the back door and he looked at me. He came running over, he grabbed the wig and he threw it across the room. And he started bawling.
Oh.
I didn't look like his mom.
Right. Yeah.
That was the last time I ever wore that wig. And that was the last time I ever was in front of my son without a wig, that looked like me.
Right. Yeah.
That was traumatic enough for him to watch his mom suffer. He wanted me to look like me as much as possible. And so you just don't, if we don't talk about this, people don't understand that for their own children, right?
Right. Because it's real.
It's real. He's an 11-year-old boy who can't tell me that he wants me to look like his mom.
Because he doesn't know how to articulate it, because he doesn't want to upset you. He knows that you're, he
probably didn't even understand it.
Yeah.
He just came out and ripped it off my head, and I understood it. But if we can talk about this, and maybe somebody else's child who's acting up, they can go, you know what?
Yeah.
Maybe I need to, you know what I mean? So it's important to have these conversations.
It really is. Because that's the one thing that I have found through this journey myself, is that the more I talk about it, when anyone says something about my hair, I'm like, oh my God, girl, I'm wearing a wig. Are you kidding me? Because what I have learned is that the more you talk about it, the more people come out of the shadows.
Yeah.
And they need that, just like we did. And that's kind of part of me. Now, granted, I do love having really good hair days every day. And I love that I can match my hair to my outfit. I'm not going to lie, but I will tell you, I embrace the fact that I wear wigs. It doesn't have now, it no longer has to do with my illness and what I came through, that I feel like that's it's a benefit for me, that's part of my purpose. But I've met so many women who have said something about my hair, and I've been like, oh my gosh, this is not a hairdresser. I buy this. But then they tell the story, their story. And they always say, and I'm sure that you see the same thing, I don't know who to talk to about this, but I'm very insecure about, for whatever reason, because there is a plethora of reasons why women, have thinning hair or lose their hair. So I totally agree. We got to talk about it, because, it's an important community, and I feel like a lot of times those women are just in the shadows.
Absolutely.
So I love what you do. So everybody go to that website.
ebeauty.com.
Yes. I love it. I love it. No, I just think it's important. So thank you for doing what you do.
You know what I think is awesome is that I totally didn't correlate this until right now, but I wear black scrubs to work every single day. And I walked in today with these pink scrubs just because I saw them and I thought they were really cute. And everyone, all my staff were like, oh my gosh, you're in pink. And I love that I'm in pink right now, because I think that that's really important with just breast cancer awareness, because we're middle-aged. And I hear so many people around our age or younger or older being diagnosed. And I think that's really important too, because you don't think about your health until about now, really. I mean, you always seem kind of invincible. And so I think it's really important too, just breast cancer awareness and making sure you're doing, your self, now I'm getting into my nurse practitioner mode, but your self-breast exams.
But it's valid. Like, it doesn't have to just happen in October, because isn't that the
October month?
Yeah. It doesn't need to be just October. It means everybody needs to be aware of their bodies and paying attention. And, if there's a question in their mind and something doesn't feel right, then.
But I love today is the very first day I've ever worn bright pink.
That is true. It's the first time I've ever seen you in pink.
I never wear it, and I didn't think about it until right now. I'm like, maybe there's a reason I wore pink today.
There's always a reason.
Yes, definitely. You look great. Thank you.
And talking about that, if you don't mind sharing, is this something that you discovered yourself, or is this something you found at an exam?
So fortunately, I did feel it. I wasn't doing a self-exam. I just happened to be washing my breast in the shower. I was 41 and I had no reason to believe that I would ever have breast cancer. I had no family history of it. And so I was just washing my chest, and I'm so grateful that the tumor was near my skin, or I would have never felt it. I wouldn't have necessarily gone to get a mammogram. And so I was very lucky to have found it. Now, not lucky enough to have found it earlier and had found it early enough not to have chemo, but I felt it. And I listen, going back, I would have done self-exams every month, but you don't think that's going to happen to you.
Right.
Well, I think that, at 41, you still, I mean, I know now, like, and I'm 47. I'm trying to think of how old I am. You get to a point where it's like, you can't remember, you like either lie, you're younger, or you say you're older, just or you're younger. But I think that I'm just now kind of starting to think about like health. Like, okay, I've got to think about that, because when I'm probably at 41, you're still feeling pretty young and pretty, not really worried about health issues. And so I think that's really important, just that,
to be aware,
to be aware of our bodies with, and to not just brush off things that maybe don't seem quite right just because you think, I don't have a family history or anything.
Or being paranoid.
Really
Well, I think if you do self-exams, you know your own chest. And that can start as early as you want. Just get to know your chest, because I can tell you for certain, if you detect it early, it's way better than going through the chemo I went through. Trust me. I still have health issues. I still have heart issues. I have, liver issues because of it. I lost 4 teeth because of my chemo. It affected my body so greatly. There's collateral damage to it. So get to know your chest.
Right. That's at this point, just, at our age in general. I mean, really, there's a lot of exams we need to keep up with now.
There's so many. Colonoscopies, yes. But I think mammograms, I got a notice the other day that my mammogram was due, and that's the first time I've gotten one like every year. So you obviously get to a certain age that they're yearly. I didn't realize they were yearly. I thought it was every 2 to 3 years.
A while ago, actually.
I don't know. This is the first time I've gotten a mail about one.
I know I've passed that point. At 51, I get lots of notices.
It's good, though.
How did you cope, Christine, like with losing your chest altogether? Was that like, were you so tired of being sick that it was a bit better for you, or was it just as devastating as I would imagine it must be?
When I lost my chest to breast cancer, and I never woke up without a chest. So when they did the mastectomy, I had expanders in for 3 months, which when you wake up, it looks like you have a chest. It's not comfortable, but you look like you have a chest. And then they swap them out for implants. So I never saw my body without a chest until 2020. And then because of the implants and because of the damage they did, I have a concave chest. So it was so extreme, the difference. And I mean, I'm fine with what I look like. Obviously, I love who I am. I love what I'm doing, and I love my body, even though it's scarred up and I have a concave chest. But I also have again, it goes back to my faith. I feel kind of unstoppable, but it's not because it's based on what I look like. But I mentor a lot of people who've lost their chest, and they feel I don't know what the right word is, but they don't feel empowered. Now, we're working on that, because I think you can be empowered without a chest, but they struggle with it. And so, and I talk to a lot of women who message me and say, I have not shown this to my husband. I wear a sports bra at night. I wear prosthetics all the time. And I think that's really sad. I feel bad for them, because that's got to be a burden. That's a heavy burden. And so I'm very grateful for where I am in my life. It's not ideal. I mean, do I like to have a concave chest? Absolutely not. But I'm fine with what I look like because of, again, it goes back to my faith. I was maybe more concerned because I knew I was getting implants. I was maybe more devastated about losing my hair than my chest because I was like, I'll wake up with a chest regardless. And maybe it's going to be better because they're not going to move. You know, when my implants were in there, they didn't move. They were really pretty. They were, you know, really high. They weren't saggy.
They were nice and perky.
They were the perfect size. They weren't big. They weren't small. They were just kind of like the perfect bees. But, you know, my hair, when I lost my hair, I was like, ah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's everybody's experience is different. Mm-hmm. Everybody's experience is valid. And I can't speak to anybody else and how they feel, but it was quite an awakening in 2020 to wake up without anybody with me in an emergency situation for like 5 doctors to surround me the next day and start to peel away the bandages. And they said to me, do you want to see it? And I tried to I had a mask on and I tried to hold back the tears. I was like, I didn't want to show them, these doctors, how devastated I was. And I remember kind of mumbling to them, I'm going to wait to see this when I'm with somebody who loves me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I didn't want to look at it for the first time with strangers that I would never see again. Yeah. And so when my mom picked me up from the hospital several days later, she and I looked at it together because I was going through a divorce at the same time, which was a whole nother kind of level of pain. But she and I looked at it together and I felt safe. But, you know, that's the other thing. Like, we have to feel connected to people, I think, in order to get through trauma. Mm-hmm. It's so important for us to be talking about this and for you guys to be doing this because so many people do feel alone. Yeah. So I applaud you what you're doing because feeling alone is some sort of hell. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think just sharing your feelings with that, because someone might see you, you know, on Victoria's Secret with your breastless model and think, gosh, she's got it all. This doesn't bother her. This is, you know, exactly. I don't feel that way. But then they know, I mean, you've had times where this was very hard for you to bear and hard for you to, you know, to look at even. And so I think that's important. Again, just being vulnerable so other people can relate and realize that they're not alone.
Yeah. I mean, it took me months to go back into my closet. It took me months. I wouldn't even go in my closet. I didn't want to see my beautiful clothes. I didn't want to put on anything because I wanted to just put on sweats because I was like, I'm going to have to throw away half my closet. I live in Miami. I have no idea if I'm going to be able to wear a bathing suit. I don't know what dresses I'm going to be able to wear. And finally, months later, I went in my closet and it was tough. It was tough.
Yeah. Unbelievable. Yeah.
You know, I mean, we don't think about that sort of stuff, right?
There's so much that you just don't think about. You don't realize.
There's so many layers to it. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Because it really is an emotional journey. Mm-hmm. Like, not only is it physical, but it's such an emotional, like, and you've got to somehow find your way to bridge the two so that it becomes.
I think the physical part was first of all, the physical pain was grotesque, but the physical pain was less than the emotional pain.
Yeah. And I think that that's what takes people by surprise. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like you just don't know until you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then
it's permanent. Like it's over. Like,
right.
When I was going to be flat or concave, whatever you want to call it, forever, I was like, this is permanent. Yeah. Like, this had to really sink in. And it took me a minute.
And you find your peace with it.
You find your peace with it, but you can dig your way out of it and you can let it devastate you, or you can be a vine. Let it push you forward into helping people. And that really is a choice.
Yes.
Well, I'm really grateful for just you being so open and vulnerable.
Absolutely.
And thank you for all the work that you do. I'm really excited about your book becoming a film because I think that's really important. A lot of women are going to experience this, and to be able to hear someone like you share your story, share your feelings, let them know that this is normal, this is okay. And also just the things that are available to them. I think that that's really important. So I am really grateful for you coming on today and sharing your story with us.
Yes,
sure.
Thank you. And just one more time, what is your wig?
WeBeauty. WeBeauty.com.
Okay. Thank you. Yes.
Oh, no, it's awesome. I can't wait for people to utilize it. We have so many wigs.
That's amazing. No, it's amazing, guys. Anyone listening, please go do it. Yeah, check it out if you need it. So
when we do the podcast, we will share the link to that. And then your book, too. What was the name of your book again?
My book is called Walk Beside Me.
Awesome. And then the film's Hello Beautiful?
Hello Beautiful.
Love that.
Amazing. Over, so it's coming.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's perfect. Yay. Perfect.
Well, thank you again for sharing your story and just being raw and honest. We really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you so much, Christine.
For having me, ladies.
It was great
so
talking
nice
with you.
Guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
She was fabulous.
Mm-hmm. She was. I think that's awesome, just how, she's so open. I mean, obviously she was very big in looks and how vulnerable she is and how open she is about her journey. I think that's amazing.
So honest, yeah.
Because I do think that that's where, like, whatever that point is, like, you do have to be honest and you have to be raw. And, I just think that there's so many people that suffer in silence. And I love those that we talk about that put it on the table. Let's talk about it. Like, you're not alone. You're not like the Lone Ranger out there. So.
No, she was great. It's, what a harrowing story.
Well, and to go out of your way to like really show people it's okay to be like this, and it's okay to be yourself and show who you are and not be ashamed, and just to be, I don't know, have her spiritual connection and all that she's been through, and to go through divorce on top of all that.
Wow. Yeah, that was kind of came out of left field because
that's a lot at one time.
Oh, can you imagine being that sick and that, again, being that vulnerable and that, like, your self-esteem being so, although she said, like, her self-esteem wasn't as low then, but I can't imagine.
I love, though, just, again, being vulnerable. I mean, we obviously talk about the embarrassing things here, but, like, Natalie Stavola that we had, I thought it was great how she will, like, post, hey, like, this is what's going on with me now. I think that's, because we talked about, video and they're taking a picture of the kitchen and everything perfect, and then the big mess on the side. And I think it's important because a lot of people see just that perfect kitchen or this perfect family. And so I think that's important to be just vulnerable and honest,
Because that's life.
Yeah.
Life isn't perfect.
No.
Life is tough and hard and chaotic and disgusting at times. And anyone that tells me that their life is perfect, I'm like always like, bullshit.
Really? Not
sorry. That is like, but I do. And that's, again, Trisha, I'm just going to say, like, that's why I'm so grateful for this podcast, because we don't talk about it as women, but we are actually our greatest support system.
Yeah.
And I just, again, life is ugly. Yeah. I mean, it is. You can like dress it up. You can put a wig on. You can. Life is ugly, but you got to find the beauty. But I think that what we're showing is that the beauty actually comes from within.
Yeah.
So cheers to you, Trisha.
Yes.
Thank you for doing this.
Cheers to being supportive of each other.
Cheers, ladies.
And don't forget your breast exams.
Yes.
That's so true.
Booby check.
Yep.
Baby check.
Thank you for joining the ladies of the Middle AGEish podcast as they journey through the ups and downs of this not young, but definitely not old season of life. To hear past episodes or make suggestions for future episodes, visit www.middleageish.com. That's www.middleageish.com. You can follow along on social media at Middle AGEish. Also, if you have a moment to leave a review, rate, and subscribe, that helps others find the show, and we greatly appreciate it. Once again, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll catch you in the next episode of the Middle AGEish podcast.